In a devastating Monday massacre, a crazed gunman strolled into a Midtown Manhattan office building on Park Avenue, killing an NYPD officer and 3 other people. The gunman, 27-year-old Shane Tamura, who claimed to suffer from CTE, a brain injury linked to head trauma from his time playing football, stormed the swanky skyscraper after double parking his BMW with Nevada plates and casually marching into the building with an M4 rifle. Tamura entered the 44-story building in an apparent vendetta against the NFL, which has its headquarters on the building's lower floors. The gunman was reportedly carrying a note in his pocket that expressed grievances with the NFL. After shooting and killing 3 people in the lobby and injuring another, Tamura mistakenly took the elevator to the 33rd floor, where building owner Rudin Properties' offices are located, and killed 1 more person before pulling the trigger on himself. But how did a crazed gunman drive cross-country with an assault rifle, illegally double park his car, and casually stroll into the building of a high-security Manhattan office building? What kind of measures can the lobbies of these buildings put in place to stop an active shooter? We asked 2 security experts to get their opinions.
My name is Brian Higgins. I'm the president of Group 77, which is a security and public safety consulting firm. I am the retired chief of the Bergen County Police in New Jersey and was the commanding officer of the SWAT team for many years.
My name is Glen Kucera. I'm the president of Allied Universal's Enhanced Protection Services Division.
Well, unfortunately, it's a phenomenon in the United States. Not that other countries haven't seen it, but at the level we have, it's almost as if active shooters are a routine conversation. Now, that doesn't mean that they happen regularly. Chances are you'll never be involved in one, but they happen all way too often.
There's a lot of technologies that are deployed. And a number, first of all, it's the surveillance camera, which we clearly saw the surveillance pictures of the suspect walking with the M4 long gun. But the number one thing in security 101 is do not let that suspect reach the perimeter. Okay. So regardless, when the suspect walked in with a long gun and started firing on everybody in the security area, that automatically went from a security protocol to a survival. Okay. And anything that could have happened after that, whether it was locking down the perimeter, whether it was locking down all of the elevator bays, most of the people that would have done it were unfortunately hit by gunfire. What we don't know, people ask me about the security base, should they've been locked down. I don't know the answer. It is possible that clearly he was searching for the NFL, it seems, based on his motive. He was in the wrong elevator bay, right? A woman came down, walked out, the door was open, she walked out unharmed. Thank God for her. He may have gone to that open door and taken that up to the elevator, okay, so up to the 33rd floor. So I don't know all of those specific requirements, but unfortunately, because it happened so fast, because he parked his vehicle, double parked, only walked for a matter of seconds, not minutes, and then breached the perimeter and started firing on everybody on the inside. Unfortunately, whatever security protocols they had in place were never put into action.
I have seen buildings where once you get in, there's nowhere to go physically. There are turnstiles or clear partitions, and you have to go through a metal detector and screening. And the technology in this world has really moved at light speed. There's technology where you can cycle rate of a second or so, up or down half a second, where it screens people to look for weapons and threatening devices. But if somebody comes in and they want to avoid those security measures, you have to have a physical barrier. Now, even if you do, you have to look at all security measures as a delay method. It doesn't matter. If you have a door that's locked, it may delay somebody, but if they're intent and they have the equipment, they can get through that door. If you have a physical barrier in your lobby, they can still get through that physical barrier. A police officer who's armed is a delay method. What that officer did by sacrificing his life is really let others know that there was a shooter in the building, and the time used for that person to assault the officer was time when a civilian wasn't assaulted. So these are security measures that are technological. You have access control, right, where you're seeing biometrics being used now, where employees going in a building and out, or people who have credentials have to swipe in, have to swipe out. We know they're in the building. We have camera systems that will let people in based on facial recognition. And the same technology could be used at deeper into the building. So let's say you get through the foyer of the building, the lobby, you get past the physical security measures. You can't get on the elevator unless you have a card that'll swipe in. So there are layers of security that we'd like to see. And then once you land on the floor off the elevator, there's quite often a second layer of access control. There isn't a standard. I could tell you that there's a certain level of security that certain clients expect. There are buildings that are rated. You'll see them rated for energy, usefulness, accessibility. There has been talk about some companies basically doing a security rating of a building. Do they have fire safety equipment that's up to date? Do they do regular plans? Do they have security in the lobby? So there are best practices that are common, but there's no required standard.
There really is not a requirement that they have any security whatsoever. All right. So it is, it's wide open. And I walk into these buildings all the time, right? And I see the variability in the type of security. What they had in 345 was fairly typical. In fact, it was a good security protocol. They had a paid detail, they had a security guard, right? And they were checking people as they walked in. That is fairly standard for New York City, but there's a lot of buildings I can walk in here right now that have little to no security. They have a security guard. Sometimes they have a guy in a black suit that is more of a concierge than a security guard, right? So the requirement is wide open.
Drills are not required, but several years ago, 2017, 18 or so, each building over a certain occupancy or height has to have submit a health and safety plan, a HAS plan that's reviewed by the FDNY. Active shooter plans are part of that. And that was really just to make sure you have an active shooter plan. But there is no requirement in commercial buildings that you have an active shooter training or even policies. Quite often we hire police officers from the local jurisdiction. And the way that normally works is the officer is paid through their department, however they structure it. Either the client pays the city and the city pays them, or they have a third party that handles it. They're not on duty, but it's official business, if you were. So he's in uniform. All the actions that this officer took that day were in a line of duty. It's just above and beyond his normal work week and his normal salary. But quite often officers, particularly someone like this who has 2 children and 1 on the way, need a little bit extra money. On his or her day off, an officer will pick up a paid detail. So they're in uniform, their actions are sanctioned by the police department, just it's additional pay and additional work than their routine assignments. There is, but it's not easy to do. Remember, especially when you have banks like this, and I understand he got on the wrong bank of elevators. So you're not stopping at all the floors. Some elevators might begin at like the 33rd floor, right? So you have these elevators at different heights and levels. You could recall them. That's what usually happens, right? And the fire alarm. Now, we recommend people not pull a fire alarm during an active shooter, but you can use similar protocols and recall the elevators down and shut them out. In a fire, what happens is all the elevators recall, and then they're there for the firefighters to take up with their equipment. So there is the ability to do that on elevators. There's also a way to make sure that your elevator can only be ridden by those who have access. So you have an ID card, or you're a visitor that day and I issue a temporary pass that will get you on the elevator. But until you stop at the desk, I vet you and you're given that pass, you can't access those elevators. Everything I see indicates someone who was focused. He was on a mission, right? The short amount of time it took to get from Vegas to New York, the route he took, he gets out of the car and there's no fumbling around, right? He just walks out with his firearm, goes directly into the front door and starts firing. So I think it's a combination of he was motivated. Quite often what trips people up is thinking about what's going on around them. I hope I don't get seen. I hope I don't get stopped. Apparently he didn't consider that, or at least it isn't evident in his actions. And I'm sure more will come to light as they investigate this. And then there's the New York City effect, right? People are moving about fast, quickly. People are carrying things. Sometimes I see people carrying the most bizarre items. I see them wearing costumes and such, and they just kind of blend in. And if you hear people talk about what they do in New York when they walk on the street, they ride the train, they say, don't look anybody in the eye, try to avoid direct contact. That happens a lot too, right? People are walking into a building, they have business. You have to worry about how much time it took you to get there or to be late. So there's so much moving about in New York City. There's so much activity. I don't think everybody is stopping to look at someone's hands or what they're doing. There are different models that organizations want to have, right? They want to have tight security, but they don't want you to think about it. They don't want to create this appearance that, oh my gosh, why is all the security here? Is there something wrong in this building? Right? So that is a definite balancing act. You want people to come to work, to feel good about coming to work, going into a nice building like this, having your potential customers coming in that way, your vendors. But yes, there is an element of, not that it's fake necessarily, but making people feel like there's a level of security. And the perception doesn't always match the actual level of security, right? What the security officers, not just the police officer, the security officers that are supposed to provide security, what level of training do they have? What are their assignments? Are they there just to point people to the elevators? Are they there to issue guest passes? Or are they supposed to intervene during an incident? You're going to find most unarmed security companies, their officers basically become victims like everybody else during an active shooter. They have to run, they have to get out. They may help lead people out. They may lock a door, but they're not armed and they can't fight against the shooter. So their training is the same level as your employees, maybe slightly higher.
Anytime a perpetrator or suspect reaches your perimeter and gets into your building, then you may be reacting from a security posture to a survival posture, right? Everything that needs to be done possible to avoid that breach of security, because when they have a long gun or whatever it is, could be an IED, right? And you have to do everything you can to push that out. The other thing that's becoming very evident after December 4th and through this is situational awareness, right? This suspect walked down the street with a long gun. You do see in the photo a couple people staring at him from behind, but everybody has to be on high alert, not just in New York City, right? But everywhere, because the threat is evolving and because the number of potential bad actors seems to be increasing. Social media feeds some of this, all of the political conflict and everything going on in the world seems to be building rage. People just need to be more aware and cognizant of their surroundings and report any actions that they see people acting suspiciously.
So it's always the question always pops up, what could have been done differently? What could have stopped this? And hindsight's always 20/20, right? It's obvious that the tenants or the property manager took the extra step of putting a police officer in the lobby as a layer of security. I think if we look back to access control, maybe there would be physical barriers. So if someone does get in the lobby and they want to do harm, they can't physically get to the rest of the building. Now, even if that's the case, I don't know that it would have maybe prevented any injuries or death on the higher floors, but in the lobby, there aren't many places to hide. And it's happening so quickly, as we said before, the time it takes for your mind to shift to what's happening and what should I do about it, right? If you look at these videos afterwards, people barely are running sometimes. They hear a noise, they hear commotion, and then they're injured right away. So to second guess it would indicate that maybe they did something wrong. I don't know that the company did anything wrong, but I think there's always a security measure that we might want to implement later on that would prevent this exact incident. But remember, these incidents, although similar, always have their own unique flavor.